Hey y'all, welcome to the 10th official episode of another Black Girl podcast. Woo! If you don't know me, I am your host, Laura, whatever, don't really care, as long as you're talking about me. Ooh, that sounded weird. But this is the 10th official episode, and I have some pretty big news. So let's get into the theme song. This is another Black Girl podcast. Black girl. We're doing our best to make it last. This is another Black Girl podcast. We're doing our best to make it last. Another Black Girl podcast. Yes. So on the 9th episode, I spoke about... It was the obligatory back to school episode. So if you haven't caught that yet, please tune in. And for everyone who has gone back to school, teachers, students, lunch ladies, janitors, teachers' assistants, and all of the in between, I hope that you're staying safe and healthy. And I hope that you kicked off your semester as best as you possibly can in a corona quarantine. Yeah. Anyways, this is the 10th episode. I feel like I've been doing this for such a long time now. And it's only the 10th episode. Like, what? I mean, like, where did the time go? I feel like I just started yesterday. But I also feel like I've been doing this for a while. Like, I'm not as nervous anymore, but whatever. That's not the point. So, here's for the news. This is the 10th episode, and with the 10th episode, I wanted to announce that you can find Another Black Girl, everything branded Another Black Girl, on anotherbg.com. And not only that, on that website, and about this time next week, you're going to be able to find and purchase the Another Black Girl podcast Deca Affirmations workbook. Ooh, let's get a round of applause. All right, I love that button if you don't know by now. So, like I just said, I have a website now. It has a blog and some about me stuff, a contact page, and then also an area for you to subscribe. So, not subscribe, but like to, drop your email for any updates. I think this is going to be great because I'm so curious to hear feedback, and to have it all in one place, if you go through the website, would really, really be helpful to me. So things that you like, things that I could improve, things that you didn't like, please let me know. And don't troll me. Don't do it. Yeah. And like I said, on that website, you are going to be able to purchase the Another Black Girl podcast Deca Affirmations workbook. So, this workbook is going to be all of the affirmations from the first 10 episodes. So my plan is to make a workbook every 10 episodes. I might make them seasons, might not. Still deciding, whatever. But it's going to take all of the affirmations from the first 10 episodes and basically going to ask some questions, give you some stuff to chew on, and kind of expand on the affirmations that have been at the end of these episodes. So in the workbook, there's going to be some stuff about me, some stuff about my opinions that I have the right to change. And there's just going to be some good questions that I've been thinking about in terms of trying to grow and improve and become whole and make myself the best person that I possibly can be. And I would love to share that opportunity and share some of my thoughts and questions and some things that I've been meditating and, thinking about along the way. I would love to share that with you. So in about this time next week, that's a bit of why I didn't have an episode last week, because I wanted my next episode to announce said things. I was trying to have the Deca Affirmations Volume 1 workbook to you by this week, but it's not done yet. So by this time next week, it's going to be done, and it will be available for purchase. It's not going to be anything crazy. I know. I know. Trust me, I know. Isn't it crazy? Like, when I listen to podcasts, to me, it's so crazy because people like lean in and like whisper on the podcast. Like, you're whispering into a microphone. Like, people can still hear you. It's funny, besides the point. So, by this time next week, this episode is going to go up on Sunday, September 13th, 2020. So, September 20th, 2020. Everything should be up and running. Yes, I'm excited. So that was my big news. I'm going to be posting about it on the socials after this podcast goes up on September 13th. I wanted you to hear it first here, and then you'll see it on the socials. But for everyone who's been rocking with me up to this point, I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so glad that you're taking this journey with me. Of course, there have been like some weird like technical difficulties and things that I need to work out, things that I'm still learning. So I'm so grateful for your patience, your presence, and your support. As always, you can find me on Twitter at AnotherBGT. On Facebook, you can find me at AnotherBGF. On Instagram, you can find me on AnotherBGI. And now you can find me on AnotherBG.com. I mean, like, how official does that sound? Like, find me on anotherbg.com for all things Another Black Girl. Oh, and then my link tree is Another Black Girl. Plain and simple. Right? Yeah, it is. Whatever, that's it. So, I appreciate your support, like I just said, and thanks for rocking with me up until this point. I really appreciate you. And I'm so glad you're here. This episode is going to be about Labor Day, I guess. I wasn't going to do an episode on Labor Day. I don't know why. I think I just needed a minute. And then I posted on Instagram and was typing a caption about Labor Day, and it became like a few paragraphs long. And I was like, man, this could have been an episode. So this is about to be an episode. We're not talking about like the cutesy like American labor. We're talking about prison labor. The underbelly of America. That was and only made possible because of the free labor of enslaved Africans. We're going to be talking about immigration labor. So yeah, happy Labor Day. But we still got a ways to go. So we about to talk about it. Thank you for staying tuned. This is Another Black Girl podcast. Before I move on, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about Anchor, which is the forum I use to publish and share my podcast, Another Black Girl podcast, with you. It is absolutely free, and there are creation tools that allow me to record and re-record and re-record and edit my podcast from my phone and or my computer. It distributes my podcast so I can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Castbox, I think it is, and a whole lot of other platforms. I can make money from my podcast with no minimum listenership because of the ads. Anchor also finds the ads for you, honorable mention, and it's basically everything you need in a podcast. So it gives you some transition music and some pretty cool features, some data, some analytics, some cool looking charts. And yeah, it's a great forum to publish your podcast on. So if you wish to start one, go to anchor.fm to get started. So my Instagram post that I made was inspired by a tweet that I saw. I can't remember who tweeted it. I tried to dig on my Twitter, but I'm on Twitter a lot, so I guess it's buried in there with the likes and whatever else. But it was a poll, and it asked which one should be eradicated first. Racism or poverty? And I was about to vote, and then it dawned on me that if you abolish one without the other, its counterpart is just gonna reemerge in some different way. Because racism and poverty in this country have gone hand in hand. Obviously, when we look at low-income neighborhoods, they are disproportionately black and brown. And when we hear racist people speaking about black people. Black is usually used as a dirty word, which is synonymous with poor and ghetto. And before I say it dawned on me, it didn't dawn on me, it hit me, because we knew this. Clearly, in a capitalist society, somebody's got to be poor. Somebody's got to be exploited. Someone has to fill the have not section. And that's where racism comes in. So racism is the contributing factor, and it is to blame for black and brown people being paid cents on the dollar compared to their white cisgendered male counterparts. So let's talk about the wage gaps. All of the wage gaps are in comparison to white cisgendered men. An article that I found on nationalpartnership.org that was a PDF published in 2020 said Latinas are typically paid just 54 cents for every dollar paid to a white non-Hispanic man. Native American women, indigenous women, are typically paid just 57 cents for every dollar paid to a white non-Hispanic man. Black women are typically paid just 62 cents for every dollar paid to white non-Hispanic men. White Asian American women are typically paid 90 cents for every dollar paid to white non-Hispanic men. And compared to white cisgendered men, white women are paid 79 cents for every dollar paid to white non-Hispanic men. Obviously, that's irrelevant when we're talking about black and brown people, but I just wanted to throw it in there for context. So now let's talk about the wage gap as it pertains to men. I found this on payscale.com, and it was published in 2019. And this is all compared to a white cisgendered man. Black men are paid 87 cents. Native American men, 91 cents. Latino men, 91 cents. And to those who are wage gap deniers or unbelievers, is this really that hard to fathom and believe, considering that not too long ago, black people were only considered 3/5 of a legitimate person, or 3/5 of a cis white man? Is it really that hard to believe? And when speaking about wages and when speaking about labor, some people say, you know what, do you have to really make this about race? Yes, it's about race because race applies. Not everyone is paid the same wages, and most people aren't being paid fair wages. So clearly, yes, slavery happened. But it didn't just stop there. Slavery, up until the present day, has reinvented itself and has disproportionately affected the black and brown communities in which it was created to target. Yes, slavery happened, and that is the most extreme and very blatant case of free labor in this country. But after slavery, what about convict leasing, where the rich and many corporations could lease a convict the way you go lease a car? So you can have their free labor, and instead of paying them or paying them pennies, you pay the jail where you got them from. And of course, these prisons became homes to disproportionately alarming black and brown people. Why? Because prisons and the police system in this country began because of slave patrols. Slave patrols basically meaning patrols, groups of people, or police, as we come to know it now, searching for, capturing, and returning enslaved people who tried to escape. So, of course, as we look at police reform and criminal justice and the prison system, of course, it's painted with the brush of racism. Clearly, it's all part of a larger system that affects black and brown people. So, just like how you could lease a car today, back then you could lease convicts. for their labor and return them to the jail or prison you found them from when you get the chance. And then also, there was sharecropping, where black people worked the land but didn't make fair wages and did not own the land, usually. And I'm not saying this looking my nose down on anyone, because my paternal grandmother did pick cotton. And she knew what it was. She knew the struggle. She knew, and used to laugh with her sister about how they used to put sand in the bag to make it seem like there was more cotton in it. So I come from that. My ancestors were enslaved. My ancestors built this country and didn't even get to see the fruits of their labor. Mine. And of course, when speaking about wage gaps, we also have to consider the silent majority that isn't usually considered when we talk about wages and unfair wages. Consider those who couldn't even get the job because of their skin color, or because of their hair, or because of their names appearing too ethnic, too ghetto, too black, too whatever. We don't even have the opportunity to speak about them because they were never even given the opportunity to be paid unfair wages. They weren't given the opportunity, simply put. And sharecropping and convict leasing are just two examples of the ways that black people, black and brown people, but more specifically, and mostly black people, have been subjected to a system and to a country where their bodies are exploitable, where their labor is exploitable, and where they make cents on the dollar for every dollar that a white cis man is paid. A country where prisons lease those incarcerated to corporations or to the rich. A country where policing began with slave patrols. And then after that, when, quote, slavery was abolished, the 13th Amendment was put into place, which says that slavery is abolished, yes, and so is involuntary servitude, yes, except as a punishment for a crime. So since we can't directly enslave people, America thinks, we can criminalize them. And of course, after criminalizing these black and brown, but mostly black people, we can get all the free labor that we need for little to nothing. So this is why my answer or response to that tweet, which says which to abolish first, racism or slavery, was what it was, and that's why it is what it is. You can't abolish one without abolishing the other. So technically, slavery in this country, if you didn't know, I hope most of my listeners do know, but if you didn't know, slavery in this country still technically it's not abolished. And if you need more about that, you can watch 13th by Ava DuVernay, shameless plug. It's a great documentary, but it's still not abolished in 2020, which is nuts. Yep, still not abolished. So when you see posts on Instagram and hear people protesting, saying that prison labor is modern day slavery, that's what they mean. And that's why you should believe them. And once black and brown people are criminalized and imprisoned, they are subjected to a system that requires their free labor. So here are some companies that use prison labor. Pantene, Head & Shoulders, Olay, Old Spice, Gillette razors, Venus razors, Crest toothpaste, Oral-B, Listerine, chapstick, Purell, AccuView, contact solution, Neutrogena, Slim Jim, Pam, Orville Redenbacher's, Act 2 popcorn, Ready Whip, snack pack products, Chef Boyardee, Kid Cuisine, Mary Collander's meals, Peter Pan peanut butter, Aunt Jemima maple syrup, Bounty paper towels, Tide laundry detergent, Gain laundry detergent, Tampax tampons, Always pads and panty liners, Febreze, Charmin Ultra, Angel Soft, Swiffer Wet Jet, Brawny, Dixie cups, cutlery, and plates, Thermacare, Emergency, Clarinex and Nasonex, Gardasil, Biotine, Alka-Seltzer, Clean and Clear, Neosporin, once-a-day vitamins, Visine, Band-Aid, Tums, Theraflu, Nicorette, Flintstone gummies, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, Aquafina, Gatorade, Starbucks bottled frappes, Life Water, Ocean Spray juices, and many fire departments. And this is important because part of our nation is on fire. A large part. The sky is red. It's alarming. So in addition to all of the free labor that prisoners are expected to provide, now they're being expected to fight fires and literally risk their lives. I remember reading an article that was written and published in the New York Times in 2020 titled, "As Inmates, They Fight California's Fires. As Ex-Convicts, Their Firefighting Prospects Wilt." It chronicles and speaks about the experiences of a woman named Miss Mata, who was previously incarcerated, but is no longer. In 2012, she began fighting wildfires as one of, quote, roughly 4,000 inmate firefighters in the state. She said that inmate firefighters are paid $2 per day and another $1 per hour when fighting active fires. She thinks about how 6 inmate firefighters have died since 1983, according to the state, and how ultimately she hears about so many who, like her, are discouraged from applying or are barred from being firefighters because of their criminal record. She said, "I also begin to really look at the injustice of what it looks like to be this massive labor force for the state of California that's getting paid pennies on the dollar. We should be doing a lot more to make sure that folks are re-entering in a positive way." So you mean to tell me after someone who's imprisoned is paid $2 a day, maybe 3, maybe 5, while also putting their lives on the line, can't even apply or are told not to apply for a job that they have an extensive resume in? They literally have experience doing the job and are barred from it because of their criminal record. So, to put your life on the line, you could buy 2, 3 bags of chips? Really? That's unacceptable. If someone is doing a job where they're literally putting their lives on the line, they deserve to be paid a fair wage. This includes those who fight fires and are imprisoned. This includes all essential workers. This especially includes those nurses and doctors who are in there trying to save as many COVID patients as possible. They deserve a fair wage. But again, we knew this, right? You knew this? Nod your head. You knew this. If you don't know, fake it. You know it now. And when speaking about prison labor, it's disproportionately black and brown. It isn't just exclusive to brown people, but we, black and brown people, fill up the majority of prisons and jails. And furthermore, we are exploited via the prison industrial complex. We are also exploited outside of prisons, especially if we, black and brown people, are immigrants, especially undocumented ones. This is another group that we haven't even considered when speaking about exploitable labor. No labor, in my eyes, are exploitable. I'm speaking from the standpoint of our great country that we know and love. The labor of undocumented immigrants, mostly alongside those of documented immigrants, are exploitable. In speaking about free and exploitable labor from documented immigrants, Montclair State University posted and published an article titled "Essential but Disposable: Latino Workers Bear Brunt of Labor Inequality During the Pandemic." In this article, a man named Mark Hugo Lopez says many Latino workers do not have job security and hold jobs that are more at risk because of COVID-19 as compared to those of other racial groups. This article goes on to chronicle the experiences of many documented immigrants and Latino employees who were told things like no work, no pay, who have kids at home, or a spouse or partner that was laid off recently. And it also chronicles the experiences of those who have also contracted COVID-19 because of these work conditions and experiences. And if these are the experiences of documented Latino immigrants, imagine all of the difficulty that non-documented immigrants have been experiencing even before this pandemic. And of course, we aren't just talking about Latino or Latina immigrants. We're also speaking about those African immigrants that are overlooked or disproportionately discriminated against, who are also exploited beyond belief in terms of wages, labor, and so on. And in my research for doing this episode, I found a really interesting article in the Milwaukee Independent. Obscure, I know. I mean, like, what's in Milwaukee? Where is it on a map? Not the point here. The quote says, U.S. capitalism solved its instability problem by making cyclical downturns afflict chiefly a minority subpart of the whole working class. It is positioned that minority to bear the brunt of each cycle and suffer its damages disproportionately. Whatever communities were forced into the shock absorber role, poverty, depression, broken families, slums, and inadequate education and health facilities became more widespread among them that were among the majority of the working class. Police and prisons were to keep the lid on, tame, patrol, and control the restive portions of the shock absorber communities sequestered in slums or ghettos. All right, allow me to translate what that means. Real quick. Capitalism is a flawed system. It inflates, it inflates, it inflates. Boom. Everything falls. There's a recession every decade, I want to say at the most. So, when speaking about cyclical downturns, that's what they are referring to. So, U.S. capitalism that has the cyclical downturns afflict a minority subpart of the whole working class, meaning the black and brown folks, who bear the brunt of each cycle and suffer its damages disproportionately. So when there is a burst, or when there is a recession and or depression, those cyclical downturns affect a disproportionate rate of black and brown people. Whatever communities were forced into this shock absorber role, because clearly when these black and brown neighborhoods experience these cyclical downturns, it makes it easier and kind of creates a cushion at the bottom for every other community that wasn't deemed a shock absorbing community. The product of these cyclical downturns that disproportionately affect said neighborhoods are, like the quote said, poverty, depression, broken family, slums, inadequate education and healthcare facilities, as well as high policing and mass incarceration. Racism and poverty are directly proportional in America. You can't have one without the other, and if you try to abolish one before the other one will just reinvent itself, the same way slavery did, and continues to do, to be quite honest. In June, the great Angela Davis, who I share a birthday with, said that she is convinced that the ultimate eradication of racism is going to require us to move toward a more socialist organization of our economies. I think we have a long way to go before we can begin to talk about an economic system that is not based on exploitation and on the super exploitation of Black people, Latinx people, and other radicalized populations. She says, but I do think that we now have the conceptual means to engage in discussions. I know this episode was a rough one, and it's it's very troubling, to be quite honest. It's very troubling, but if the great Angela Davis has some kind of hope, we can too. I truly believe that these things are possible. I believe that we could implement a new economy that is best for the whole group of American people. I believe that while also doing that, we can talk about and engage in defunding and abolishing the police, because I do say it every week. I think that while we are also doing that, we need to be working to eradicate racism and pay reparations, because
open your purse.
Black and brown people, specifically the descendants of slaves, do and are entitled, and we do deserve it. Period. I believe there is hope. I believe that we can do it. It's going to take a lot of work, and there's still a lot of people that are deniers of everything that I have said in this episode. To some people, everything I have said, regardless of percentages and numbers and data and statistics and all of those things, would say that this is fake news, would say that these are all lies made by Antifa or the radical left. But if you're listening, you know that that's not the case. You know that. You know that. And when I go on these rants, a lot of people, as their response, have basically nothing to say and simply ask what we can do. Do your research. See what companies and products require and have braided prison labor into their business model. Educate those who are racist and problematic. Stick up for your trans and non-binary siblings. Support Black business. Wash your hands for more than 20 seconds. Put your mask above your nose. All of the above are great places to start, but once you start, that's not it. You can't stop there. Advocate for prison reform, to defund the police, for criminal justice reform. But the work isn't done. Until we see liberty and justice for all, the work isn't done. Until we see fair wages for everyone in this country, regardless of documentation status. If they are here, they deserve to be paid fair wages because the wealth is here. But as of right now, the wealth is only pent up for the wealthy. The wealth is here. The resources are here. And they're available. Well, not for us, for the wealthy, but with the reform that this nation requires, it will be available if we put our hand to the plow. If we do the work that is required. I have great hope for our future. I have great hope for our nation. But we've got to do the work. And for the wealthy, for the police, for the government that has exploited the majority of this country.
Open your purse.
So this has been another episode, the 10th episode of another Black Girl Freaking podcast. I am so grateful for you listening, supporting, and attending my virtual conversations, I guess. Can we even call it a conversation? Because it's just me talking. But I know y'all be responding in the car, like on your phones. Whatever. I know y'all be responding. I could feel it. But anyways, seriously, on a serious note, thank you for, I don't want to say attending, but y'all be attending. Y'all be showing out. We're at 1,500 total streams. A fancy way of saying 500. And I'm super grateful. I didn't even think that I would get this far. And now we've got another website. Link up, give me some feedback on anotherbg.com. Add another BGI for the Instagram. Add another BGT for the Twitter. Add another BGF for the Facebook. And this is your girl, Lori, Lauren, Laura, whoever. I'm so grateful for you. And yeah, thanks for taking this journey with me.
This is another
Black
Girl Podcast.
We're doing our best to make it last.
This is another
Black Girl Podcast. Black girl. We're doing our best to make it last. Another Black Girl Podcast. Yes. I'll see y'all on the next episode and on the website when y'all purchasing this Deca Affirmations workbook. I love y'all.